and the commodification of Jamaican blackness. Let's start with Garvey himself. When I am dead, wrap the mantle of the red, black, and green around me. For in the new life, I shall rise with God's grace and blessing to lead the millions up the heights of triumph with the colors that you well know. Look for me in the whirlwind or the storm. Look for me all around you, for with God's grace, I shall come and bring with me countless millions of black slaves who have died in America and the West Indies, and the millions in Africa to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. With God's dearest blessings, I leave you for a while. And Marcus Garvey wrote that upon going to federal prison in Atlanta in 1925. Our vision of Marcus Garvey, and I don't have pictures here, but I think we have enough images around, and you can also kind of think of the ways that you have seen images of Garvey in your day-to-day life. Our vision of Garvey has shifted continuously over time. We've gone from thinking of him as a radical black nationalist and conservative Pan-Africanist. Some people think of him as a foolish dreamer, a ridiculed failure, exalted prophet, a national hero, to icon, image, just a popular name. We've come to understand Garvey differently as the decades of time and our own convictions, how we think about ourselves, has changed. But today, our simple memory of him is often of his profound impact. We remember Garvey as a symbol, Garvey the elocutionist, Garvey who shouted Africa for Africans. We remember Ethiopia, the UNIA, and the proud raising of flags of red, black, and green. We remember always, as though we were there, right there with Garvey, being burnt by the same sun and breathing the very same air, the sense of pride that we felt when this Negro with a hat stood to speak. We remember the uniforms, that sense of pride, the speeches, the platforms, the marches, the unity, and the dream. We remember standing up straight for the first time because Garvey said we have a place that we can proudly call our own. We remember believing in a home. But memories are always bittersweet. So do we remember also the injustice, the ridicule, the imprisonment, the loneliness, the hurt, and Garvey's quiet death? But these, it seems, are the hallmarks of greatness: an idea, a voice, a movement, being taunted, being persecuted, being martyred, being memorialized, and in today's twisted world, being sold. And that this presentation is mostly about that last part. What is it that Garvey taught us to remember about ourselves, and ourselves as blackness, or as black people, our blackness? And how is it that despite building this nation, this Jamaica that we said is built upon Garvey's words, this sense of black pride, this race pride that Garvey has asked us to continue, this nationalism, we keep finding ourselves and our heroes back on an auction block of one sort or another? Is it that we're remembering Garvey's message, or is it just his face? Do we remember the struggle and the power behind his words, or are there now just mainly quotes and slogans, one-liners that we put on placard and t-shirts and poster and whatever else? What is it that we actually remember of our history? Let me digress from the paper here. I don't know about all of you, but I know when I was in school, every year, Heroes Weekend, you get a little school project and you do something on Garvey, and it's usually you write a picture, you write a quote, when Garvey born, when Garvey dead, and the same thing for all of the other heroes, but there is no solid sense of what this man's image actually means and what these words mean. And that is, I think, the work that is being done here and the work that we all have to keep doing. What is it that happens when we start to use this history and our heroes, our history, our heroes in the service of industry, when it becomes the face of selling things commercially or selling ourselves for tourism? My work, as I said earlier, has been largely on heritage tourism. And so I have an interesting and a whole lot of unanswered questions about, I'm not professing to know everything, the use of heritage sites and the use of the image and words of black radicals to push a capitalist agenda. Garvey himself was a man with an entrepreneurial spirit. So this is not about entrepreneurship. It's not an attack on the cultural exchange that heritage tourism is supposed to foster. But I want to know about the layers. What happens to us and our heroes and our history and our sense of black consciousness, because that's what Garvey was all about, knowing ourselves as black people, when they're all reduced to easily consumed products. Garvey's words, images, and ideas are all through popular culture. A lot of it through reggae music and the prominence, acceptance, and acknowledgement of Rastafari and reggae music, and that kind of prominence that it has achieved not only in Jamaica but in the world at large. There are the song lyrics that we all know very well. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds, which is a quote from Marcus Garvey's speech in Nova Scotia in 1937. There's also whole albums like what I mentioned earlier, Burning Spears, Marcus Garvey, Garvey's Ghost, dedicated to honoring Garvey. And then, of course, the unmistakable presence of the colors. People dressed in a particular way, the red, the black, the green, and then very often the gold added in. And so it's impossible to argue against Garvey's influence on Rastafari, on reggae, and on the image of Jamaica at large, how people come to know Jamaica, what people think of when they see Jamaica. While Garvey himself is very rarely what we see as the face of Jamaican tourism or what people may think of when they hear the word Jamaica, the image of Rastafari has become more and more central to the idea of Jamaica that we're seeking to sell to the world. And Garvey's own image have been used in a similar fashion to that of Che Guevara, Tupac, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Bob Marley, and many more revolutionary figures whose faces are now artistically manipulated, and they're on t-shirts, on flyers, on dorm room posters, being sold all over the world. Yes, Garvey said his message, look for him in the whirlwind, and the message is very much being spread in the whirlwind and through the storm. But who are the consumers? Who are the producers? Who's making it? Who's buying it? And does the impact of these messages change depending on who is making and who is buying? Does Garvey's face have the same impact on a young Jamaican male as it does on the white American college student? Are they buying for the same reasons? As time has passed, the idea of Africa for Africans and Garvey himself have become icons and symbols, and very often you talk to people and you can recognize a picture of Garvey or recognize a one or two quote, but don't really have much sense of anything that goes beneath. Is it important though? Does it matter? Do we need more than a one-liner in a song reminding us, as Damian Marley did, that Marcus Garvey said for read? Does that actually impact? Or does it matter how we start to remember old Marcus Garvey? Have we advanced to a point in our liberation that these things that were once so fraught with turmoil, Garvey, who was so greatly persecuted, can now just become a part of regular pop culture? My problem with all of this is that I don't think we have. We haven't quite gotten to the point where it's okay to just have a picture and no explanation behind it. There's no space for a revolution on a t-shirt. There's no space for a revolution in tourism. Is this commercialization of Garvey, of Rastafari, of Jamaicans, of black Jamaicans, a further advancement of the message? Is it that we are spreading the message far and wide, or is it simply being diluted? And that is a question I'm asking everyone to think about, because I can't come and say I have a solid answer for it. In 2005, Sinead O'Connor, everybody familiar with Sinead O'Connor? White musician, bald head, very... Yes, Irish musician. Backed by a Jamaican band, performed a cover of Burning Spears' Marcus Garvey on the Late Late Show on American television. While people would say that the performance did work towards pushing along Garvey's message more and pushing along Burning Spears' message to remember Marcus Garvey, what does it mean to have this white woman be singing this song, especially at a time when I went through and I was trying to find black women singing that song. Couldn't find any. Maybe I'm wrong, but I couldn't find any. And a lot of the references that are made to Marcus Garvey in our reggae music are made by black men. So also, why is it that our black musicians or black female musicians are not singing this in the same kind of way? So what does it mean to have Sinead O'Connor being on the world stage commanding this song when we ourselves are not doing it? Does the song have a different meaning coming out of her mouth than it would out of the mouths of any of us here? And it's not about saying that Garvey is exclusive to blackness and to black people and that the message that he gave cannot be applied to other situations. But Garvey was a race man. And Garvey talked about race consciousness and knowing ourselves. And can we effectively push forward Garvey's message when we are also trying to get the thing sold? The sale of Garvey's own message, the sale of Rastafari, the sale of our history of enslavement, and the sale of this rise of blackness, because black culture has become extremely popular throughout the world. That kind of sale is only possible through the simplification of these messages and through selling and bringing forth nostalgia. And for black people, nostalgia can be a very, very dangerous thing. According to a memory theorist, our vision of the past is always shaped by the present, and that is what nostalgia is. Every time you think about the past, you put it in the context of what is happening within your day-to-day present lives. And it's not only a matter of you putting it in the context of your day-to-day life, but other people look at your past in the context of what they think of you today. We are prone to nostalgia, and we are obligated. We don't only remember things, we don't only recall the past, but when we think about the past, we touch it up little. Especially when it is that we're trying to put it on, to simplify it, to put it on a t-shirt, when we're trying to put that message through something that we can sell to somebody and say, hey, come and look at us, this is our cultural production, this is our tourism, this is our past, we have this strong history of resistance. But in order to sell that, you have to think about what is it these people think of us now. And what they think of us now as a strong history of resistance is a very nice Bob Marley song. So instead of going into what that resistance really and truly is, we pare it down to one small thing. It is, what it means for us here is that our colonial past is always present in our day-to-day lives. Because as we continue to sell, people around the world remember us as colonial Jamaica. And what we are selling to them is that memory of us as good servile people, or even as we are now selling ourselves as resisting people with reggae music and strong black people. It is still done in this kind of way that is non-threatening. It is not that we are valorizing slavery or colonialism for ourselves, but our experiences with them are so extensive that they've become an unavoidable part of our identity. And it's not that we've ever been a passive people. And Garvey himself is a true example of our resistance. But with the selling of cultural productions, with tourism presented to us as a savior when we're struggling and people can't find no food to eat and they're telling us that this is what we need in order to build our economy, we find ourselves in a position where you say, well, how do we fight what it is that you're saying feeds us? If people are going to buy the t-shirt that has Bob Marley's image on it, even if it's not really we make it, if people are going to buy the song that we are putting out there, if people are going to come and visit our museums or go to our beaches or go to our tours, our cultural tours about our heritage, why should we fight that? Why not bring them all in? But what do we do to ourselves when we allow ourselves and our heroes to become souvenirs? We're selling our culture and our music and our heroes to a world that's not really fully aware of its message. And one of the things that I would like to know, and maybe people can tell me after, is there a better way to do this? Because it's also not that I'm saying just get rid of this altogether, especially not when we have a way that we can truly benefit. But there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. There has to be a way that we don't end up being in the exact same position that we were when we were in shackles. Just that now we're dancing and singing on the stage. We sell these images of Garvey as a proud man in his feathered hat, and we underline it with quotes that say things like, a people without a knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And every day when it's worn around and people are looking at it, there's not much that people do to stop to think, what does this really and truly mean? And in doing that, we forget that Garvey also said, a race that is solely dependent upon another for its economic existence sooner or later dies. We forget that we are the same ones that thought of Garvey as a madman, a criminal, and a thief. And were he in our midst today, we would probably tell him the exact same thing. We underline our tourism ads with Bob Marley's One Love. And we always have a Rastaman under the waterfalls flashing him locks. And we forget about Pinnacle. And we forget about Coral Gardens. And we forget that not too long ago, and they're at the National Library, and all you have to do is walk in there and ask them for the folder on Rastafari, that we were writing newspaper articles that had the titles like, Bearded Cultists Take Over King's House. The problem with nostalgia, because we forget all of these things now, because know that it is beneficial to us in the present, we no longer have to think about the past, the true past. We color all of it with what benefits us today. The problem with it, and this commodification of blackness and our black radicals, is that it makes us very good liars. Because we can lie to, we're not only lying to America and Europe and everybody else, we're lying to ourselves on a day-to-day basis. We tell ourselves that we need those people to come to survive, that we need to put these things in that kind of way to survive, that is how our tourism has to be, that is how our cultural products have to be, that when we say things, we should not nice it up a little bit so that them don't get too mad. We flatten our history for sale and we forget about everything else. I don't know if you've ever looked through some of the older tourism ads that said things like, come back to Jamaica, come back to gentility. Or looking through some of the things on the tourism board website that identify Columbus as our first tourist. Columbus who came and brought diseases and killed off people, rape and kill people, and he was our first tourist. When we flatten things like that, we forget all about the layers. We only remember 4 or 5 things, 4 or 5 quotes that Garvey said, the things that you put in your school project when you're a child, the things that you put on the t-shirt that you buy. We remember only about Bob Marley's One Love song. We don't remember anything about Get Up, Stand Up. We don't remember anything about Peter Tosh because he's inconvenient. Rasta becomes only about red, green, and gold, and Garvey becomes a man in a hat that your child does a school project on. What will our children learn about black consciousness if we keep this up? Will it be a face on a t-shirt, or will it be about a man who changed our world? Will they learn that they, just like Garvey, can step out and be different and be thought crazy and do something to make our collective lives better? Our questions have to be about more than economic gain. They can't just be all of this complaint that people have all the time, the flag gone everywhere. You're saying do him hand like this, and now all of China and everybody have it and we're not making any money from it. Bob Marley image everywhere and we're not making any money from it. It can't just be, are we making money from the images of our heroes? Are we making sufficient gain from the sale of our music? Yes, those are very important, and yes, we are being robbed royally around the world. But we need to also ask, what is it that we're doing to ourselves in order to make this sale possible? What does it mean that we are the same black people who are being sold on the auction block just down the road there, just down the road here downtown, that we're being sold on the auction block and are now selling ourselves again in a different kind of way? When we produce the music, what is it that we're saying? What kind of message do we want people to take? How are we presenting ourselves? When we put the image on the t-shirt, what are we trying to say with it? When we paint it on the side of the building, what do we want people to get from it? What does it do for us? And what does it do when we are creating heritage sites that people can come from all over the world and walk through, and we're presenting to them a history that can be on a little placard this big, or that is just told in some pictures. We also need to ask ourselves, how is Jamaica seen in the world? Remember, I talked about nostalgia, and that is not just about how we see ourselves, but how the world sees us based on what they know our history to be. Are they coming because they are interested in us as revolutionary people? Are they listening to our music because they're identifying with that message? Or is it just because we're exotic? Why is it that our icons are so desired? And more importantly, what is it that we lose when we sell? I have here a little poem that I want to share with you in closing. It's called Death of the Revolutionary. We had dreams once of changing the world, of having our names breathed from the lips of school children who are learning what it means to be great. We had dreams of revolution, of wars of words and intellect, of ideas and ideals, of sordid pens and placards, masking tape shattering the silence because we must be heard. We dreamt of hands held, overlapped and entwined, breaking proverbial barriers, strangling the status quo. We thought, we were sure, we were utterly convinced that we could be the change that we wanted to see. Remodel, refine, refashion, and rebuild. We had dreams of rebuilding a nation, of giving hope to our people, of being like our ancestors, but different from our predecessors. In our dreams, our descendants had a chance. We had dreams of progress, of stomping out corruption, of being honest politicians, raising respectful teenagers. In our dreams, children did not wield guns while careless adults cowered in fear. We had dreams of comfort and security, economic stability, growth, advancement, of taking our place on the world stage. We had dreams of making a name for ourselves, of being heralded glorious, revolutionary, influential, successful, benevolent, different, better. We had dreams once. We had dreams of changing the world. Now we only dream of survival.